Tonight, how will Super Tuesday play for the frontrunners Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton? A breakdown of the role that big money plays in this election, and the latest on the feud between Apple and the U.S. government. This is Talking Points. Welcome to Talking Points. I'm Alex Amico. President Obama says he is planning on making a Supreme Court nomination. Obama says despite Republican resistance, it is important to have the court at full strength. Obama is likely to choose a consensus candidate that can get support from Republicans. Mitch McConnell has said that even if the nominated justice is conservative, he will still not give them a vote. There was another mass shooting this week, this time in Kalamazoo, Michigan. The gunman shot 8 people, killing 6 with a semi-automatic pistol. The shooter is currently in police custody and being charged with 6 counts of murder. Police say he had no history of mental illness. Johnson & Johnson was ordered by a Missouri jury to pay $72 million to the family of Jacqueline Fox. Fox died of ovarian cancer in October, and her cancer was linked to her use of Johnson & Johnson's talc-based products. Lawyers for Fox have said that Johnson & Johnson has known that these products cause cancer since the 1980s and failed to warn consumers. Another 1,200 cases have been filed in Missouri and New Jersey alone. At least 8 people were killed after a dangerous storm system hit the U.S. on Tuesday and Wednesday. Over 60 tornadoes were reported from South Carolina to Maine. More than 100,000 people are still without power, and cleanup is currently underway. A referendum has been set up.
Will we be safer, stronger, and better off working together in a reformed Europe or out on our own? I believe we'll be safer in a reformed Europe because we can work with our European partners to fight cross-border crime and terrorism.
A referendum has been set up regarding British exit from the European Union. David Cameron has set the date of the referendum for June 23rd. Cameron is against Brexit, citing economic or security threats, but his cabinet is split on the issue. The referendum could also trigger a separate referendum on Scottish independence. We'll be back with a full election breakdown right after this. Well, that was the worst block of this season.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.
Here's your check. Oh, you got it. You know, since I got rid of my car, I really enjoy walking.
Okay. Got it. No.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates.
Oh, you're home early.
You live with your mom?
That'll set your game back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Week in the 26th race. Here to recap the South Carolina primary and the Nevada caucus is Talking Points correspondent Galat Malamed. Galat, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk first about the Republicans in South Carolina. What happened and what did we learn from that?
So Trump came in first. He got 32% of the vote, but not only that, he got all 50 delegates and won all 15 congressional districts. As for second, it was really close. Rubio 22.5, Cruz 22.3, so nearly a tie, and no one else was even close. Jeb got just under 8%.
Now both parties voted in Nevada in a caucus. What did that tell us?
So on the Republican side, Trump came in first again with 46%, Rubio again second with 23.9%, and Cruz 21.4%. So the common trend here is that in Nevada there was a poll of Republican caucus goers, and 61% said they wanted the nominee to be an outsider. 60% of them said they were angry with the way the federal government was working. So this just proves that it's really the year of the outsider and is the explanation for Trump winning both of those.
And talking about the year of the outsider, the the perceived front runner before Trump got in the race was Jeb Bush, the consummate insider. He dropped out after South Carolina. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Jeb dropping out, it's really the end of the Bush dynasty. Jeb's brother and father, they both did really well in South Carolina. They both won there, and they were in South Carolina with him earlier campaigning. And despite his family campaigning with him, he still polled under 8%. He has one of the largest super PACs ever. He spent nearly $130 million on his campaign so far. And still, this just shows that all the money in this election, political family ties, it's not going to help you this year. Marco Rubio is likely happy about this because it's speculated that many of the Bush voters will now go to Rubio.
And for the Democrats in the Nevada caucuses, Hillary Clinton bounced back from her New Hampshire loss with a win, not an overwhelming win, but not a nail-biter either. What does that mean going ahead?
Yeah, she had 53%, Sanders at 47%, and the big difference came with the minority voters. Clinton won 60% of the delegates in the 22 Latino majority precincts, and she got 76% of the black vote, while Sanders only got 22%. Now, 1/3 of the voters in Nevada were either black or Hispanic, so this helps explain Clinton's win, as it's really the first racially diverse state we've seen so far. And this also is likely why she'll win South Carolina, because she has a big upper hand in the minority votes. Of course, Sanders has the upper hand with the younger people. He got 85% of the votes in the under 44 category in Nevada. However, 63% of the Nevada electorate was over 45. So just having the young vote isn't enough. It is important to note, however, that Clinton won Nevada in 2008, but of course, we all know how that worked out.
Thank you so much. Super Tuesday is coming up next week, and it's arguably the most important day in determining the candidates for the presidential nomination. Here to break down everything that will be going on in nearly a dozen states is Talk Points correspondent Josh Feinblatt. Josh, thank you for joining us. So let's start by, what is Super Tuesday? Why is this so important?
Well, first of all, Super Tuesday is the first Tuesday in March, which happens to be March 1st this year. And there's going to be 11 states voting in their primaries. So for the Republicans, that's 595 delegates, which are up for grabs. And that's about half of what the Republicans need for their nomination. And for the Democratic side, 974 delegates are up for grabs, which is about 40% of what they need. So it's very important just to get as many delegates as possible.
And now, what states for both sides are voting on Tuesday?
We have Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, Vermont, and Virginia will be holding primaries for both sides. Alaska has a Republican caucus. American Samoa, which is obviously very important, has a Democratic caucus. Colorado has a caucus for both, but the Democrats will be choosing a candidate, whereas the Republicans will be choosing delegates who will then choose a candidate at the convention.
Now, given those states, for the Democrats, who has the upper hand going into Super Tuesday?
It's sort of even, but it's leaning towards Hillary Clinton. The southern states are definitely towards Hillary, and the northeastern states are more towards Bernie Sanders. But Hillary's supposed to win anywhere from 7 to 9 states, with Sanders only winning 2 to 4. But you never know; he could pull out a couple. But here's the thing, though: Sanders has to do well because Hillary Clinton does have super delegates already with her. So Bernie Sanders has got to find a way to make up that ground somehow.
And on the other side, for the Republicans, the race is getting pretty desperate right now. Who's got the upper hand given the states that we're looking at for Super Tuesday for them?
Trump seems to be slated to win most of them. Cruz is only expected to win in Arkansas and Texas, which is his home state. Rubio's really only close in Virginia. Kasich and Carson don't really have much going on. So if Trump does well on Super Tuesday, this could be where he pulls away.
It is important to know that they all award delegates proportionally, not winner take all.
Yeah.
But are there any states in particular that you want to keep a close eye on for Super Tuesday?
Definitely keep an eye on Texas. I mean, just because it's the biggest and it has the most delegates up for grabs. Ted Cruz has the home state advantage for the Republicans. According to Real Clear Politics average poll numbers from February 19th to 24th, Cruz is polling at 34%, which is about 7% higher than Trump. And for the Democrats on that same poll, Clinton is up by about 23% on Sanders because she has the support of such a large Hispanic population in Texas. But the entire day is really important, but Texas has just so much going on.
All right, Josh, quick prediction. After Super Tuesday, do we know who the two nominees are going to be?
At this point, if Clinton wins all her southern states and continues to win and wins by larger margins, and Trump wins the most of the states he's expected to win, I think we could be looking at a Clinton-Trump runoff.
Josh, thank you for joining us. Coming up, why this election year has turned into the year of the outsider. Don't go anywhere.
8-goal lead.
The weekend, usually, is a time to relax and unwind from the pressures of work and school. Unfortunately, the weekend is also a time for many people to abuse drugs and alcohol. Listen to the words some people use when they talk about the good time they had over the weekend. They say, "I went to a party Friday night and got plastered," or "Saturday night, I was really wasted." Maybe they didn't have such a good time after all.
This message furnished by the NCAA.
Wow, these are really good.
You act surprised. Practice makes perfect.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
How you doing? My name's Steve. My family's lived in this neighborhood for years. Recently, things got so tight, we had to go to our local food bank for help. I lost a lot of sleep worrying about what the neighbors might think. That is until I saw them there, too. How'd I do, Steve?
A little stiff. You could have done a little better.
What? Come on. You know, I have an Academy Award.
Yeah, but not for playing me.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
This presidential race has shown favor for the non-traditional politicians such as Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. Here to talk about their success versus the establishment is Talking Points correspondent Hearns Laguerre Jr. Hearns, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So what's different about this election? Why 2016 and not 2008 for the year of the outsider, and to this extent?
Well, I think first we have to look at the surroundings, comparing those two times. Looking back in 2008, 2012, in comparison to now, we have a government that is more divided. A government that is divided leads to more disputes and longer time to get certain policies into fruition. And also, I guess, looking at a candidate has more layers to them. In 2008 and 2012, if a candidate were to run on electability and experience alone, they were a viable candidate to become the next president of the United States. But in this election, we see that a candidate who cares and who is honest is being put into the mix as well. The New Hampshire primary actually came out with a poll testing these layers, and it showed that Hillary won in experience and electability, while Bernie Sanders won in a presidential candidate who cared more and who was more honest.
Now, how are voters reacting so far to this mood of the outsider, to these outsider candidates?
Well, voters are angry in comparison to 2008, 2012. And to look at both the Republican and the Democratic parties, both Trump and Sanders kind of speak to this anger. Of course, both of them are on two different sides of the spectrum, but they both speak to the anger that many Americans are having with the establishment at government. Bernie Sanders was quoted saying, "I'm angry and American people are angry as well." Trump takes it a step further and says, "I'm very angry because the country is running horribly," and even says he will take the mantle of anger, kind of using that as a driving force to gain more people to follow him. And we also see that a lot of people are upset with the government because they think that is rigged in a sense with super PACs and all that. A lot of people don't like the fact that super PACs help candidates become more electable. Trump has used a majority of his money for his candidacy, and Sanders has used small donations. They haven't used what the establishment is known to use.
Now, speaking of the establishment, there's outsider candidates are nothing really new in American politics. There have been candidates at least for quite a bit of time, but there always seems to be the establishment candidate who winds up putting them away. Why hasn't that happened this year?
Simply because there's a great split. Not so much in the Democratic Party. We only have a Hillary who's taking the establishment vote roughly, and Bernie Sanders who's taking the people who are against the establishment vote. When you look at the Republican Party, we only have Trump that represents the people who are against the establishment. And you have frontrunners like Kasich, you have Rubio, Cruz, who are splitting the establishment vote. Therefore, none of them are able to pass Trump. And it seems as though Trump is leading by so much, but it's because of the split between those candidates. We see this as an issue that happened with Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush had about $150 million from Super PAC for his candidacy, but he never was able to pass 18% in a win in any one of the primaries or caucuses. So we see that in addition to the Republican Party being overcrowded, there's a lot of dilemma with split votes.
Hearns, thank you for joining us. The recent book, Dark Money, chronicles the role of billionaire investors in politics. Author Jane Mayer spent the last 5 years investigating how campaign contributions have affected voting and policy. Talking Points correspondent Shruti Marathe now joins to discuss how those details are shaping the 2016 election. Shruti, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So how does this book explain the current state of American politics and particularly campaign finance?
I think the best phrase that they use in that book is called the triumph of engineering, because really what people are doing that are funneling money into political campaigns is that they're engineering this public opinion to think that the way that they want the public to think, and then in turn they usually get policy to flow that way. So organizations like the Koch Foundation, but also even more organizations are just putting a lot of money into research that will benefit their cause and the kind of thought and policy that they want to see in DC.
Where did all of this start? What's the beginning of this?
A lot of people, especially in the book, they cite that extreme conservatives around the 1970s thought that their view was being marginalized in Washington, D.C. And they thought that maybe American universities were especially liberal, and they wanted to get their thought and their policy into the public, and then they started funding money. They started throwing money into research so they could counteract the work of American liberal universities and get extreme conservative thought out there.
You mentioned the Koch brothers earlier. There's sort of two different images of the Koch brothers that get put out there. There's sort of a favorite punching bag of the left, and then they themselves have their own image where they're philanthropists. They've donated quite a bit of money to hospitals. Could you talk a little bit about how they go about doing that?
Well, in the Koch's mind, they believe that they're following their own ideology and what they're doing is good for the public. So they actually think that, putting $50 million into climate science and making down climate science will, at the end of the day, help the American public, because they think these fossil fuel industries is what's creating jobs and helping the public. So they will spend a lot of money into backing researchers and backing candidates that will funnel elite opinion into thinking a certain way, and in turn, then get the policy that they want.
Why is it this presidential election that we're talking so much about campaign finance? What's different right now?
Well, a lot of candidates, specifically Bernie Sanders, are kind of counteracting this big campaign finance movements and really using more grassroots movements. And they are a little bit more powerful than that, because when you can get a person rather than a big political organization to donate to a campaign, that vote is a lot more motivated, and you can go back to that person and ask for more money, and at the end of the day, that makes candidates run a lot more smoother.
You mentioned some candidates who were shying away from super PACs. One candidate who certainly did not was Jeb Bush, and it didn't get him anywhere. Could you talk about how that even happened?
I mean, Jeb Bush's fundamental flaw is he started this race with more money than any other candidate, but he did not have the power to turn that money into votes. And at the end of the day, a lot of people in the Republican Party were looking towards non-establishment candidates, and Jeb Bush personified the establishment candidate, which was his fatal flaw.
A constant theme on the stump for Hillary Clinton and for Bernie Sanders is that we need to overturn Citizens United. Mm-hmm. How is that Supreme Court decision related to our current state of campaign finance?
Well, it's interesting you brought that up, because Chuck Todd actually even asked Bernie Sanders on Meet the Press if his Jeb Bush's fatal flaw of having so much money and not being able to turn that into votes means Citizens United doesn't make any sense. But at the end of the day, these big campaign contributions aren't just changing votes, they're changing policy. And that's why people like Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton are saying we need to overturn Citizens United so that people aren't overshadowed by money and their voice is equivalent to as much money as the big political corporations have.
Shruti, thank you so much. Is Twitter censoring conservative accounts? The answer coming right after the break.
This new mom is struggling to get the skates just right. Now she's holding on for dear life.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of siblings in foster care will take you just as you are.
Welcome to Orange Press Pass.
Orange Press Pass is your ticket inside the Syracuse locker room. Hear from the coaches.
8 and we didn't win 8. We got some open looks from the perimeter, and
and players.
Well, I saw pressure coming from the backside.
Get in-depth analysis,
Looking at
reports on site, and more.
Let's go on OPP.
Orange Press Pass, live after every Syracuse game.
Here to discuss the controversy behind the ongoing case between Apple and the FBI is Talking Points correspondent Zina Saifi. Zina, thank you for joining us. So, what exactly is this case? What is the issue between Apple and the FBI?
So basically, the FBI is asking, a federal judge they're ordering Apple to help the FBI gain access to the phone of the shooter of the San Bernardino incident that happened in December that killed 14 people. And basically, Apple is saying that this is a case of safety versus surveillance, whereas the FBI is saying it's privacy versus security. So Apple doesn't want to doesn't want to allow the FBI access into this phone because they're afraid it's going to create a backdoor where other people are going to be able to access any iPhone they want.
What's exactly behind Apple's resistance to this? What's their argument here?
So there's a bunch of reasons. The first is they're thinking internationally. They're thinking if the FBI is asking them for this, then what's going to stop, for example, China from asking Apple to do the same thing, or Russia, and it's going to be much harder for them to fight a case against another country. Another thing they're thinking internally, for their business model, for their reputation, they don't want their buyers to think that they're sacrificing consumer privacy and security for something that might not actually get any good results in the end. And then they're asking a question of where's the limit? Where do you draw the line? What if at some point the FBI asks, for example, text messaging makers to change their encryption scheme so that they can access any text messages that they want to? They just think that there should be a limit to this. And the last thing is, now we've been seeing a lot of politicians talking about it. Like, for example, Trump said that, who does Apple think they are? So the CEO, Tom Cook, responded saying that this shouldn't be the way that politicians solve terrorist acts. They should be able to solve it from the beginning instead of having a company sacrifice its own reputation for something like this.
Zina, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Twitter has come under fire recently as some conservative users feel they are being targeted by the social media platform's new Trust and Safety Council. Talk Points correspondent Thomas Viola is here to discuss this. Tom, thank you for joining us.
Great to be here.
So what exactly is the criticism of Twitter in this situation?
Well, right now Twitter is trying to draw that delicate balance between protecting users' free speech, which it has become famous for, and curbing abusive users. Now, Twitter has had a problem. Its main criticism has always been that it has been poor with dealing with internet trolls and abusive users on the site. So now they've introduced this Trust and Safety Council, which is a grouping of more than 40 speech groups and essentially anti-hatred groups who want to try and eliminate these trolls. Now, Twitter has several options and tools at its disposal to do this, the most common being an outright ban of a user where they simply can't access their account is taken down. However, users can get around this pretty easily by just creating a new Gmail, and they can open up a new account and just go right back to what they were doing.
So given that, how is Twitter, as they're being accused of, silencing people?
Well, one of the ways is something called shadow banning. Now, in this circumstance, a user is banned from the site, but they don't know it. They can still use their account, they can still tweet things out, they can still tweet at other people, but no one sees what they're doing. This takes a lot longer for them to figure out and prevents them essentially from just creating a new account. Now, another thing that has happened is that a few verified accounts, such as right-wing blogger Milo Yiannopoulos, had their account de-verified by Twitter with absolutely no explanation, which drew some major criticisms from other conservative users.
Now, in our final 30 seconds, Twitter is a private company, so aren't they allowed to essentially censor people if they want to? What is the argument here?
They absolutely are. As a private company, there's no First Amendment violation. However, they have been through a lot recently. Their user base is stagnating. They have unrest in the CEO position, and their stock is falling. Something like this could result in a massive drop in usership.
Tom, thank you for joining us. Coming up next, do you believe in miracles? If so, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Every proper bear knows that the right fit means everything. Especially when it comes to car seats.
Oh, really? I just did what any bear would do.
So know for sure that your child is in the right car seat for their age and size.
I like it.
To learn more, visit safercar.gov/the right seat.
Oh, hello there.
Oh, where's that bear?
Preventing wildfires. That's all Smokey wants for his 70th birthday.
Chief Justice Earl Warren once said, "I always read the sports page first. The sports page records man's accomplishments, the front page, nothing but man's failures." This week, I'd like to take a look back at one of the greatest accomplishments in sports and one of the greatest moments for our country in the past 50 years, the Miracle on Ice, which happened 36 years ago this past week. The symbolic significance of the American hockey team beating the Soviets was obvious. It was the height of the Cold War, and the Soviet Union had recently invaded Afghanistan. But the athletic significance was just as, if not more, significant. The Soviets had a dominance in hockey rarely seen in sports. In the last 7 Olympics, they had won 6 gold medals. They had lost 1 game and tied 1 in the last 20 years. The year before, they beat the NHL All-Star team 6-0. To put it simply, they were the gold standard of hockey, and the question of these Olympics was supposed to be who was going to get the silver. On the other hand, the Americans were made up largely of college players and recent graduates. They had 1 returning Olympian. None of their players were current professionals. And the Soviets had already beaten them in an exhibition game 10-3. But that's the beautiful thing about sports, and particularly the Olympics. Every now and then, a team or an athlete that has no business winning pulls it off. The Americans beat the Soviets 4-3. Al Michaels' legendary call said it all. America did believe in miracles. The win was such a tremendous upset that we often forget that it wasn't even the gold medal game, though the Americans would eventually win that. While it can be disheartening at times to read about abuse scandals and drug abuse in professional sports, the Olympics bring out the best in us. I believe they still are sports in their purest form. 2 teams or 2 individuals matching up on the ice, the field, the court, or the mat, giving their greatest effort not for a contract or an endorsement deal, but for the thrill of victory and the glory and adoration of their country. I believe Olympic athletes are the pinnacle of Teddy Roosevelt's famous quote. "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat." And that's all the time we have for Talking Points this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to check out Citrus TV News on Twitter and Facebook, as well as all of our content on YouTube. And don't forget about our Talking Points blog. Tune in next week when we recap Super Tuesday. For Talking Points, I'm Alex Amico. Good night, Syracuse.